I'd like to start off by thanking Senior Housing News for putting on the Build Conference. We're proud to be a part of this. My name is David Fick, and I'm the president at Lantz-Boggio Architects and Interior Designers. We're a senior living firm that's been practicing for over the last 40 years. We've won many awards across this country, including a currently first place with Senior Housing News' skilled nursing building with a project in Disney Celebration, Florida. We're heavily involved with many of the best and brightest minds in the industry, and our passion comes from personal experiences, including myself. Those experiences makes us strive to do the best work we can for a marketable project, which constantly exceeds expectations for lease-up. We'd love to be a teammate of yours, as well as a great listener. I hope you enjoyed today as we're talking about post-COVID new design strategies for the future. Let's understand what it is that we need to design for. For many years, there's been studies about isolation and why it's important to be in our communities. The studies have taken place and understood that health has gone down when isolated. Living in a single-family home is a deficiency compared to living in our communities. Well, during the last several months, isolation has also occurred inside of our senior communities. As you see from the statistics here, that even inside of our campuses, the lack of companionship has gone up, as well as other statistics that shows loneliness. Another thing that we found is that designing the campuses of the future appears as though it's going to take more space. Here we see a couple of examples where dining room that is 1,000 square feet has gone from 67 seats down to 52. Not only do we have less seatings, but we have less opportunities by removing the bar. We're going to explore a couple of these solutions in order to help you at your communities and designing our campuses of the future. So let's first look at what it is that the virus attacks. As architects, we want to solve problems. And so we've been trying to learn what it is that we need to solve for the last 6 months. Early on, we understood that it was not only airborne, but it was also surface driven. Well, over the months that have taken place since the early stages of the virus, we do know that it does fall on the surfaces and that is something that we can combat by cleaning the surfaces. However, the most serious issues is with the airborne virus. That is something that we need to control, and that's what we're going to explore. In order to understand how the virus acts, a lot of these studies have understood that these droplets, which comes from the mouth and nose, and they fall to the ground or to the surfaces, are microscopic. Here you see the size of a droplet in comparison to a human hair in the bottom right. All this data that we've learned is what we take into consideration when trying to come up with solutions for our communities. We're going to explore a few things now as to what you can implement into new communities and perhaps even into your existing communities. One way we want to try and combat this is by tracking the virus. We would like to partner up with somebody at this point and study the traffic patterns of our residents. Find out where the pinch points are, where most people travel during the day, and perhaps there's even an opportunity to track and find out who is with other people during the day. This study could provide a lot of information in understanding not only how to combat the virus, but to how to control it once it enters our communities. Simply by knowing that one person contracted it, currently we shut down the entire community. But by having the opportunity to know who they came in contact with may allow us to isolate less people and allow socialization to take place with a lot more members of our campus. We want to look first at outdoor spaces. Outdoor spaces consist of many different areas. First, let's look at dining. We can expand our dining from inside, which has been reduced as we saw in that previous slide, We can allow ourselves to expand outside by creating outdoor venues, safer venues, venues that have shade structures, as well as being able to be in the light. The UV rays from sun actually combats the virus and kills it off, and the air actually dilutes it. These are a couple examples of things that you can do outside that will help you expand your dining venues. Here's an example now. If we only had 50 people inside and we needed 100 people inside, perhaps what we can do is take 50 of them and move them outside. This example here on the right is a tent in blue. That tent would hold approximately 50 people, as well as the outdoor patio. So you could actually expand this greatly. Using tent structures, which you can get from wedding suppliers who currently are not able to house large events, gives you the opportunity to expand your dining. Other outdoor spaces, which can be fun, is things like outdoor aerobics or just workouts, hiking, golf, etc. As you see here also on the grass on the lawn, coming up with creative ways using hearts is a method you feel connected with your loved ones. Pools are actually safe. When swimming, they found that the virus does not transmit through the water because of the chemicals, and also the water dilutes it. However, once you're out of the water on the deck, that's when the virus can transmit. So you want to maintain your distance when outside of the water. Other things that should be implemented in communities moving forward, which even during a virus will help socialization aspect, is things like the fire pits and the trellises and the cabanas, but also benches where they're large enough or close enough to where people can sit and socialize while distanced. Again, the outdoor spaces allow us to socialize because the virus is diluted and attacked by the UV rays. Let's look now as the entrance proceeds into the building. Here's an example of a retrofit of an existing entrance where typically as you have to walk into this building on the left, you would have to grab the handle. And of course, if hundreds of people are entering the building every day, that virus could be transmitted through a surface. However, by providing a sliding automatic door, it allows you to walk up to the door and simply enter into the building. Another aspect that you could provide is by using smart technology so that if you do need to lock down the building after hours or even if it's just a secure side entrance, using smartphones with technology that can allow you to get the code and enter into the building, therefore allows you to meet with residents as guests safely. Now, once you enter into the building, it's important to find out whether or not you're healthy. Therefore, what we suggest is to providing temperature taking stations at every entrance. If you take your temperature and you find out you're safe, you're able to enter through the next set of doors and into the building. A second aspect of this, which we haven't seen much of, but would suggest to try and implement as well, is walk-off mats, which actually combat the virus. As we learned, the virus falls to the ground, and the shoes actually pick that up and bring that into the building. So perhaps while taking your temperature, you can have that sitting in front of the temperature taking station, and your shoes are cleaned at the same time. Once you're safe and you're able to get into the building, we suggest something like this that is an alcove on the inside of the building rather than a retrofit. So if there's a possibility of just creating a 10 by 10 room off the vestibule of your building, this would allow a visitor to come in, sit inside that room, and on the other side of the glass, inside of our community, would be the resident. Now, from personal experience, I know that this can be difficult, as my mom, who's in skilled nursing, has a hard time hearing. Therefore, both people wearing masks, having glass on the in-between, became very difficult for us to communicate. So I suggest that once you build these into your community, and if it is an actual indoor room, that you can provide speakers which will enhance and give you the opportunity to connect with your loved one easier. Let's look at dining rooms now. So dining rooms typically are a large open space where maybe even 100 or more people are gathering. Breaking that down into smaller spaces, as you see in the upper left, with panels behind booths, or on the upper right, where there's panels that can subdivide the dining room, provides that opportunity to isolate or socially distance, but by breaking it down into smaller groups, protects the residents at the same time. Another suggestion we have is in the future, looking at putting your multi-purpose rooms close to the kitchen, so that if you do need a time when the virus is attacking or a new virus shows up, that you can now provide indoor dining both in the dining room as well as in your multi-purpose room, at least during the time while the virus is still active. Another thing to remember is entrances and exits of your dining rooms. Here shown in the bottom left is using a single entrance for both the in and the out. Why that's an advantage is some of our older members of our communities have a hard time remembering that, well, they need to enter this door and exit in another door. So what they do is they naturally go back to where they entered in, just because of their memory and their wayfinding. So providing a panel in between would allow you to do exactly what their natural instinct is to do, is to have the entrance and exit in the same location. However, this should be wider than just the normal 6-foot doorways, so that it can feel more natural. Therefore, expanding it to even 10 feet would allow it to feel more comfortable when having the exit and the entrance in the same location. We've seen a lot of different technologies of how to enter into the building, but also how to enter into the room. We provide typically a push to open in order to go into restrooms or sometimes even into the building. Well, if everybody's pushing that same button, there's a possibility of transmission. So therefore, a wave to open can be much safer for entering anything from classrooms, maybe your multi-purpose, your theaters, art rooms, just the full gamut of spaces that people have doors, need to use a handle. Also in the bathrooms, providing as many fixtures as you can that would have a wave to open. We see this technology becoming more and more popular, even inside of our own residences. Large open spaces typically are designed as such without the possibility of dividing it. But we suggest in the future to provide the opportunity to break the spaces down into smaller areas, at least having that opportunity. Now, you can have it as solid as you see here in the bottom right, or as open as we want. Being able to see people move through a space, as you see on the lower left, but not actually see the space, gives privacy, yet daylighting, which is an advantage. Another option is full glass. Partitions like this that may be used inside of a large auditorium or inside of your multi-purpose rooms, or even in gyms, fitness spaces as well, allows people to be safe and separated, but still see the person that may be speaking. Providing sanitation stations throughout the community, for instance, in corridors or well-trafficked areas, provides safety, but it also creates a sense of peace for the residents. If the residents feel that at any point they need to wash their hands, rather than needing to find a restroom with soap, by providing some kind of hand sanitizer along the paths or in various locations, as well as perhaps they realize that they didn't bring a mask or they want a set of gloves. These are things that just gives peace of mind, giving residents more apt to want to move into a community is what's going to sell in the future. Here is an elevator example. As you can only imagine that in an elevator, you only have a few feet in between each resident. Well, one option would be is that only a couple residents get on the elevator at a time, which could really slow down things at lunch and dinner time. But if you provide a couple of different things, such as the it's called talk to lift, which instead of using the buttons on the elevator, you actually just tell it the floor that you're going to go to. That alone helps to reduce contamination or cross-contamination, as well as providing a filtration system in the elevator, which pushes the virus down to the ground and away from your mouth and nose, which is where the virus attacks. By providing these kinds of systems and circulating the air in elevators also reduces it, as well as it eliminates the opportunity should somebody be on the elevator, exit the elevator, and a new person gets on. Let's look at some of the fitness areas. On the left, this is an example of what may look like in one of our communities today. By putting some tape on the floor at 6 foot by 6 foot space, it says, okay, you stay in that area. However, moving forward, the design can be much more playful and much more fun if we build into the design, into the flooring, whether it be circles or squares or whatever it is that you're looking to in order to keep your 6 foot distancing. You can add additional features to the inside of these circles or squares, which could make it more fun for the residents. Now, I believe that just providing something like this could make people want to work out more, even not during these COVID virus times. You can see this small image that if you applied different colored circles to the floor, maybe numbers or letters, that you could tell the residents to put your left foot on the blue circle, or use your right hand to touch the lettered square. Provides more activity and more fun for the resident. In addition, in the gyms, we should be exploring what it would take to be more isolated or separated from adjacent people working out, while at the same time being able to see people. If it's a solid panel, it becomes secluded. And we want to continue to try and provide that socialization. So creating safe workout equipment, but still being able to see people will be an advantage for your community moving forward. In addition, similarly, here in a salon, here we see pedicure stations. Similarly, in a salon, if you can create clear panels for residents to be having their hair done, nails done, etc., but still be able to see and socialize with their friends, their neighbors. It creates that socialization, which we're continuing to try and eliminate from keeping people inside their residence. Here in large open spaces, where when we can, we want to provide an opportunity for the entire community to get together, but at times when we need to isolate and bring the resident count down, we can create smaller pods. Here on the right, what you see is solid panels. Again, clear panels, whether it's plexiglass or similar, allows you to create smaller pods of people and still speak to the entire room. Therefore, if there is an outbreak or a contamination across people, you don't have to isolate the whole community. It's just the people that may be in that one grouping. So in administration spaces, perhaps in libraries, as well as in some of the wellness areas, providing separation between the resident and the staff is simply done through what you can find online in many different areas. You can find these different devices, and it allows you to give the residents some security, some sense of safety. Another item that we're exploring and we're starting to recommend, even in assisted living, is to providing balconies whenever possible. Balconies in assisted living has typically been frowned upon, but if they're going to be isolated and staying inside their residence for a long time, we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to go outside. So we're suggesting, moving forward, providing a balcony that they can step outside and feel the air, hear the birds singing, etc. Now, in some cases, there might be a question as to, well, what if the resident, may want to elope and fall over the railing? We suggest that the doors on assisted living would be something that's controlled by operations. It could be locked for residents that you don't feel are safe, or it could be locked all the time and only allowed out when a caregiver is there and observing. Inside the residence, we see a couple of different opportunities. One is used here as an example. Now, this is a very expensive device. It's called the Mirror. It's a workout program where the resident can actually use this to work out. And then when it's off, it's just a regular mirror. But let's look at this technology as an example of what we could do for the residents. Can we take this farther to where we can provide something like this, where if it's a wall-hung device or a larger device, where the resident can actually communicate with their neighbors, with their friends that are in the community, as well as their loved ones that might be far away. Their loved ones that might need to get on an airplane and fearful of doing so, allows them to actually see the person rather than maybe just the face on a small monitor. Next, we want to look at heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, or HVAC. This is a diagram of a typical standard system. Now, a lot of us put in systems that we want to try and keep the cost down when first putting the building together. But you can see here that when supplying the air back to the resident rooms, a single intake can spread out to multiple rooms. So if you have 2 classrooms or an air conditioning system that is pushing air into all the administration spaces or into the hallway, you can see that can spread the virus. So what's been done in the past is what we call more of a passive purification system. It's using UV lights or filters. As air is pushed into the ventilation system is what traps the contagions inside the filters. So this is an example of how that would work. This is a UV system where as it goes through the dampers and in through the filters, it traps some of the viruses and the VOCs and molds, etc. And then anything that gets past it would be then purified or cleaned through a UV light. It then pushes the clean air back out into the room. Here, the concept is using extreme heat in order to kill the virus. Same concept, but it has to pull all of the contagions out of the room in order to kill those. Another possibility, though, is more of an active purification, and that's called bipolar ionization. This is where it's pushing elements into the room in order to kill what is in the room. Now imagine that these droplets fall to the ground or onto a surface, a desk, etc. It is not going to be pulled into the air handler and purified in those passive systems. However, by using an ionizer, it sends this little army of charged ionization elements into the room, which will eventually locate across the entire room and kill all the virus elements in the room. This, therefore, instead of being pulled into the air handler, purifies the entire room. Here's an isolation room that you find in a typical hospital. Now, we're not saying to put in medical beds and medical elements, but we are saying is that use some of this technology and these elements that you see on the slide to perhaps take one of your resident rooms and create it as an isolation room. Maybe you need a couple of these rooms. But in the future, what this would allow you to do is isolate just the person who has the virus rather than the entire building or the entire community. A couple other items of technology is, as we talked about, providing some kind of large screen so that we can communicate with the loved ones. I know that there's different voice technology devices that are out there. They might have only a 6-inch screen. They might have maybe even a 10-inch screen. But by applying that to your monitor inside your room would allow you to have many more people or even a more life-size feel when communicating. Other elements would be, as we see what's taking place and is blowing up today, is telehealth. Now, in our communities, I think that telehealth should be more residential in character. What you see in the bottom left, although close to that feeling, it still has that medical model characteristics. We want to create something that feels much more like at home. So for those of you out there that has the means and the ability, please look at ways to provide a system that feels more residential rather than medical when you walk into a telehealth room. Let's look real quick, real briefly, just a couple of slides here. This is a community that we had worked on. It's in Maryland, and it has all the typical spaces with units. It's a multi-story building. It has, lounge in the kitchen in the back of house. It has the main entrance, which is both for entering and for exiting, and outdoor decks and activities, etc. However, we wanted to look at what it would take if we took all those concepts of what we just talked about and applied it to this building. In doing so, of course, all those technologies from ventilation and from new HVAC systems, but also travel paths and how to engage our residents with the community. So by providing all these different elements, we learned that it costs about between $3,000 to $5,000 per resident. Now, why that matters? Now, that might sound quite expensive, but in reality, what happens is that if you provide a safer than home ability, your marketing will boom. Your marketing is going to be able to say that, quite honestly, we are safer here because we've implemented all these different features, which includes activating the socialization areas, therefore reducing that feeling of loneliness and providing more of an interest for a potential resident. Well, thank you for this opportunity to be able to share this information with you. Hopefully it was valuable to you. If you have any questions, you can contact us at the information on the screen. You can scan the QR code, which will provide a direct connection to us. Or if you'd like, leave some comments in the chat box, and we'd be happy to get back to you.